Welcome to the next episode of A Sip of Sunshine. Today I'll be speaking to Kul Mahay. Kul is an ex-police officer who is now a human-centred business coach. We're going to be speaking about justice, equity, Kul's journey. We're also going to be speaking about cancel culture, and we even get onto the topic of President Trump. How on earth did we get there? I hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome to the next edition of our Sip of Sunshine podcast. Now, we've got a very controversial conversation coming up today, and I'm really excited to get going. I've got a wonderful guest who I adore spending time with, and he's somebody that when we do spend time together, we know we've got to book out about 5 hours because the conversation never stops. So welcome, Kul Mahay, to our podcast. How are you, Kul?
I'm very, very good, thank you. Busy all time, but
Good.
today I'm feeling quite chilled, so I'm looking forward to an immersive
Good.
conversation with you.
Good. Now, Cole, we've met through mutual connections and we've done a bit of work here. You've come in and done some fantastic coaching work here at Sunshine. Um, but one of the things, well, I love loads about you. I just totally fangirl you all the time. And I've been to your seminars and I just love them. I love the vibe. I love the ethos. I think one of the things that really connects us is our love for justice and
Mm.
equity. Um, and one of the things that I just adore about you is when you tell your backstory. So because I want everybody to benefit from this, will you tell us a bit more about yourself, please? So who is Kul Mahay?
Yeah, sure. I mean, when you talk about justice, for me, I guess justice is something that's ingrained within me. I spent 32 years in policing. It is something that I've dreamt of since the age of 10. You know, my dad was your typical East is East. If you've ever watched the film East is
Yeah.
East, that was like a caricature of my dad. So every Sunday he'd line all 7 children up on this settee in the front room of our house. It was a room that we were forbidden to go into for any other day apart from the Sunday, because that was like the guest room back in the day, you
Yeah.
know. So
Yeah.
we'd all line up on this couch, and my dad would put on his shirt, his tie on a Sunday. He's not going anywhere, but this was his moment. This was his
Yeah.
moment. And he'd give us the same lecture every single time. And he'd say things like, I want you all to be doctors. And if you can't be a doctor, be a dentist. And if you can't be a dentist, be a lawyer. So all my brothers and sisters used to be like nodding their heads, you know, really eager to please my dad. But I'd be sat in the corner, sort of shaking my head and too frightened to say what I felt to my dad because I thought he'd get really angry. And because my singular dream was to be a police officer. I'd read all the books. I used to secretly visit the police station just down the road from us to get all the pamphlets. I've read pamphlets
Okay.
on police dogs, police this, police that. I mean, they got so fed up of me that they had to ask me not to come in anymore. Every other Saturday, every other Saturday, I'd go down to the bottom of our street, and there's a little brick wall, which, by the way, I went to visit a couple of 3 months ago, and it's still there. We lived about
Oh,
2 or 3 streets away from the football stadium in Wolverhampton called the Molineux Stadium. And every other Saturday, I'd sit on this brick wall and I'd watch all these hordes of fans going to the football stadium. But it wasn't the fans that I was looking at; it was the police officers, and
amazing.
everything that police officers stood for: safety, security, integrity, justice, protection, all of that community service. And I think that's what really drove me throughout the entirety of my 32 years in policing. I joined policing when I was 15 and a half years old. I applied to every single police force up and down the country. I think 43 in police in England alone, and then
Wow.
they had about 8 police forces in that time in Scotland. I applied to every single one, got 26 rejections, and then on the
Mm.
27th one, this force up in a place that I'd never even heard of called Derbyshire said, "Look, we will have you, and we want to welcome you into the Derbyshire family." And so that's where I stayed, and that's where I am still to this day. And I have a love for this county, this city, that's incredible, you know. And but I learned so much from policing, from my interactions as a beat officer with everyday members of the public, people, I generally and honestly feel people are at the core very good.
Yeah.
People want justice. People want to be fair. People want to be equitable. People don't harbor bad feelings unnecessarily, and they don't
Mm.
do bad actions purposefully on a day to day. And I've
Mhm.
found this wherever I go in the world. Generally speaking, people are good, but there's
Yeah.
always that small percentage, isn't it? And it's
Yeah.
that small percentage that I've within my soul, I want to correct that wherever possible, to hold these people to account or to correct what they're doing. And I guess after I left policing after 32 years and I, aspired to senior levels, I was a gold commander in the police service. I've headed up so many departments, hundreds and thousands of people in my time. So for the last 10 years, 11 years nearly, my singular focus has been on supporting other organizations to create what I call human-centered cultures. And that's really about putting people at the heart of everything that we do. And by doing that, I think that we would naturally bring about justice in everything that we do as leaders.
Absolutely. And I think this is why it fits so well with everything I do,
Mm,
because I firmly believe that people are good people. And we wouldn't leave the house if we thought that there were
yeah.
bad people out there. People aren't bad. But I
Mm,
think looking at the way that we are helping families to sort of understand their children and the brains of their children, because that's the bit I'm really, really interested in.
Talking about early childhood trauma and the long-term effects on the brain.
The psychology of everything.
mm,
We now know that actually, if there is a problem with the brain, then people will do bad stuff.
yeah.
And my problem with the brain, I actually hosted a fantastic webinar this week with Dr. Daniel Amen. Now he has scanned something like 250,000 brains, and he can tell you what each brain will sort of what the outcome is and what they're likely to do. So if there's parts of the brain that are too small, parts of the brain that are enlarged, parts of the brain that just aren't firing. And his sort of point of view was, where if we use the sort of current psychiatry and psychology models, which is pretty much you see a snapshot of somebody, you assess them, you tick some boxes, they get a diagnosis. He said, we're still guessing. That is very much guesswork. But if we scan the brain, we can pretty much see what is going to be happening for that person,
Yeah.
how their life is going to pan out. But there's stuff that we can do to correct it. And I remember seeing a documentary years ago now called Making a Murderer, I think it was called. It wasn't the American one, it's a
Ah,
British one.
yeah.
And it was about serial killers. I'm not a serial killer podcast kind of girl, but this was actually looking at there was a psychiatrist looking at brain scans and a psychologist looking at what had happened in their environment in their life.
Right.
And they were looking at sort of early childhood traumas, which is, we know, is like a level 3 trauma, very deep set, very difficult to recover from because it happens early on and it's a repetitive trauma. Well, that damaged part of these people's brains. So it meant that almost like the trajectory was always going to be that they did something that
Mm,
gave them this enormous reward in their brain, this massive dopamine hit. So it was like bank robberies or, owning a gun and going out there and just killing a load of people in a pub. It was random
mm.
sometimes and it wasn't calculated at all. And it was very much spur of the moment. But then their brain said it was almost like if we looked at their brain to start with, they would have predicted it. So it's fascinating stuff, all that.
It is
Um,
fascinating. I mean, I'm guessing when we talk about things like PTSD, um,
mhm,
that's scarring, and I'm talking about
mhm.
scarring in a metaphoric sense. That scarring of your brain will have some consequences further down the line
Yeah,
if it's not managed, if it's not understood, if it's not even talked about. And I think very often what we do, there are so many subjects in life that feel so taboo or they feel so difficult to converse, to hold conversations about, that we shy away from it. And I think that's a dangerous thing. I think we as a society need to become much
yes.
braver to have those uncomfortable conversations that we need to have, but come from a
Yeah.
good place when we're having those conversations.
Has we become afraid of having honest discussions in the workplace?
Absolutely. I love having these conversations. And what's sad is here at Sunshine, we will have these open and honest conversations and say, I've just read this fantastic piece of research and it suggests this. And what does that actually mean? And we'll have a very open, safe conversation here. And
Yeah.
I always say, like, say whatever you like. This is how we're going to learn. Say whatever you like. But what's sad is a lot of people here and within my friendship circles will always say, this isn't for public consumption because I'm going to get some bits wrong.
So here
And
we
you're right,
go.
we've become afraid of a discussion,
Yeah, absolutely.
haven't we?
And so here we go. I mean, for me, when I talk about human-centered cultures, I talk about creating an environment where people feel safe, they feel valued, they feel seen, they feel heard, and they feel appreciated. All of
Yeah,
these are key ingredients to getting the very best out of your people. So I want to change that narrative. I want to challenge this narrative that I've heard for the best part of 4 decades now in the workplace environment, that there are certain things that you cannot say, certain things that shouldn't be talked about, or certain viewpoints that shouldn't be expressed within the organization. Here's the thing.
mm,
We are living in a world that's rapidly evolving almost day by day. We've seen
yep,
examples of this time and again, and we need to accept that the world is moving at a rapid pace of evolution. The American president might say something tomorrow, and we know that within 24 hours it will affect global markets. It
yep,
may affect diplomatic relationships. It might have an international impact in some other kind of way. And we've seen this. We see this happening
mm,
all the time. So, if we are going to be living in this rapidly evolving world, we need to get very, very good as organizations, as groups, as communities. We need to get really good at being agile enough to rapidly evolve ourselves to meet
yeah,
that changing demand, right? So
yeah,
there is this thing around responding, which is slower paced, and it is about strategizing, looking at the length and the breadth of the issue. And absolutely right, it needs to be there. But we need to have this ability to be agile and adaptable to this changing environment. We're not going to do that if we're going to smother this difference of opinions, these different voices, different conversations that come into our communities, our groups, and our organizations. And that for me is
absolutely.
something I call cognitive diversity. That's true diversity, where you
Yeah,
allow the shaping of people's pathways in life to involve, to inform the organizational boardroom conversation. And when you smother that,
absolutely.
you're smothering creativity and innovation. But it requires leadership courage to do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And safety as well, because
Mm,
I think so often um, people are too scared to speak up. But I
mm,
think creating those safe spaces, like when I came to one of your seminars in Birmingham, and it felt like a very safe environment because you knew that everybody there was there for the same reason, to
mm.
open their minds to something new.
Yeah.
So they were open-minded. You've got to have that open-minded, big thinking sort of approach to things. It's almost like that acceptance. There is a lot that I don't know. There's more that I don't know than I do know. So
Mm,
how am I going to immerse myself in this learning? I don't have to agree with people. And it's just quite interesting actually. When I did the webinar this week, when we were sort of advertising for this webinar and we were talking about all these brain scans that the doctor had done, there's a lot of people saying it sounds very unethical. I can't believe that you're aligning yourselves with this person. And I thought, no, that's really small minded. How are we meant to learn if we don't have these difference of opinions?
mm.
My job is to deliver a wide array of different learning opportunities so people can make their own minds up. I'm not here to give one narrative and say, think the same as me. I'm
Yeah.
saying, whether I agree with this approach or not, I'm going to put it on the table and I'm going to allow everybody. This is a safe space. I'm going to use my platform as a safe space. Let's explore it. Let's discuss it. Let's not get personal. Let's not get aggressive. We can just discuss it. And that's very much the vibe that I know I felt and was totally inspired by when I came to your seminar.
Has DEI practice actually led to demonising a certain subgroup of people?
Do you want to talk a bit about your works where
Yeah, I mean,
the sort of public speaking stuff that you do as well?
Sure. I mean, but one of the things I want to just touch upon is what you just talked about there around creating those safe environments. I call them environments of trust. When you create
Mm.
an environment of trust, everyone feels that their voice is going to be heard and that they
Yeah.
feel part of something bigger than them, but they feel like they are an important cog in that wheel. So getting that right is so very important. But when we police language, when we police conversations, what we're actually doing, we're smothering or we're
Mm.
excluding large portions of conversations that need to be had. When that happens, somebody will fill that gap. So let me use an example. For the last goodness knows how long, I've been involved in the space of diversity, equity, inclusion, call it what you will, because it has
Yeah.
changed so many times over the last 4 decades that I've been involved in it. Um, there has always been this focus around every course, and I've been on hundreds of courses. I've even ran courses. I was a diversity specialist and a diversity champion in the police service for so long. I'm a founder member of the Black Police Association. I became a national vice president for the National Black Police Association, trying to drive representation in the police service. And I
Okay.
now realize a large portion of what I was doing was wrong. It was actually taking us away from what needed to be done, as opposed to adding value to what needed
Yeah.
to be done. And here's the thing. In all of these courses I've ever been on, there's always been a strong emphasis on you shouldn't say this and you can't say this, you can't do this and
Mm.
you shouldn't do that. And actually, what a rhetoric that I've also heard over the last 20 years, certainly, is that there is one singular group that's been demonized in the DEI process, and that is white heterosexual men of a certain age. And that is almost oxymoronic. If DEI
Mhm.
is all about inclusion, how are we segregating and demonizing a significant portion of the community and of the society? And by doing that, what are we doing to people? Are we turning them against? They might have been allies of DEI, but by demonizing them consistently, and it seems okay to say things about white heterosexual men of a certain age,
Yeah.
seems to be okay to say bad things about them. It doesn't make sense to me because we're turning them
Mhm.
off. And whatever we're doing that, whatever we're policing that, then other people will come along and say, well, I'm all about freedom of speech. And freedom of speech
Mhm.
should be about us being able to say anything. So then what they do, they will come with an agenda. And so under the umbrella of freedom of speech, they will espouse hate to
Mhm.
speech and hate language. And we've seen this. We've seen this in recent history, globally and politically, where people have filled that gap under the guise of freedom of speech. If
Yeah.
we hadn't policed that language in the first place, we wouldn't have allowed these
Mm.
populist people to actually inform that agenda. So there's two types of populism for me. There's a right-wing populism that we all talk about, but I also believe there's a left-wing populism as well.
Mm.
And it's that left-wing populism that led to things like cancel culture and all of these kind of things, where we're smothering
Yeah.
voices, legitimate voices, and by doing that, we're giving rise to right-wing populism.
So, what is school avoidance? Now, a lot of people call this school refusal, and it's really important that we reframe how we look at this, because actually, our children aren't refusing to attend school, they're actually unable to attend school. Now, if a child was
It's a powerful letter with a peppy sound that pops up in some of our favourite words. As we continue our reading adventure, we'll discover how the letter P helps us describe all sorts of things. Get ready for a perfect and playful journey.
to get excellent outcomes for their young people with special educational needs and disabilities. And what this means is that I get to see lots of different graduated response.
Meet our neighbours in space, the planets of the solar system. We live on Earth, but we're part of a much bigger family. There are 8 planets that all orbit or travel around the sun. Let's start with the closest
How
to
to
the sun.
teach our children and young people the skills they need to regulate their own behaviour, but in a way that really meets them where they are rather than encouraging them to mask their behaviour so that the adults around them find them easier to manage. We hope you find this course super interesting and that you get lots out of it. So without further ado, let's go on to the first module.
Uh-oh, we've managed to get onto the topic of Donald Trump.
I think what Trump has done, I'm not a Trumper by any stretch of the imagination,
No.
but I try to be very balanced in my thinking. And I think the one thing that I would say that Trump has done is that he has opened up the debate on cancel culture. He has opened up the debate around DEI, because I think it was a debate that needed opening. We needed to have a lot more critical thinking around this concept that we've been pursuing for the last 3-4 decades, to be honest.
Yeah, and I it's really tricky. It's really tricky, and I think it's so hard to speak about these big leaders when they are making such enormous cock-ups.
Yeah,
I
true.
just said cock-ups on a podcast, but I think it's a real tricky one, and I mean, I've got a lot to say about local leaders and the fact that they do shun conversation that we are willingly wanting to have with them.
Yeah,
We reach out to them all the time and want to talk about equity in education. As you know, that's what we do.
yes,
We don't get anywhere. Nobody wants to talk to us. So it's going to be interesting. I think that we really do, like you said, everything you've said today is about that human-centered approach, no matter the size of the organization. So where are the voices? One of my favorite sayings is nothing about us without us. And I would really like to think that those communities who perhaps did feel very well supported, and it looked like they were being supported because the turnover at Rolls-Royce is very low, the staff turnover. They do stay there a long time.
yeah.
I mean, we all know somebody who's worked there 25 years or more. Tends to be a job for life, which suggests to me that they are very well supported, that they do feel seen. But where are their voices? I want to hear their voices. I don't want to hear the voice of the BBC. I don't want to hear the head of some charity. Great that they're speaking up on behalf of people, but who are the people? Because actually they have their own voices. Let's amplify those. Let's get those voices out there. And I think there does need to be a way, particularly in an organisation that size, to measure these changes, because
Absolutely.
there's, they've got to be looking at, are there any grievances or, additional HR procedures they're now having to carry out? But if it's worked for the better, then I'm all for it.
Yeah,
Um,
I'd like to think that when Rolls-Royce, an organization as big as Rolls-Royce, made this powerful decision, they would have also thought it through to the degree that we also need to measure the impact of our decision. So hopefully they've got some kind of metrics in place to see whether or not it was
yeah,
the right way to go or not, as the case may be.
interesting to see what happens there.
Let's talk about cancel culture. After all, it's been a session of controversial topics. Why stop now?
So the third thing then that I would love us to talk about today, another nice controversial topic, because, why stop now, is cancel culture. So,
Right.
we've got this cancel culture. We know we're in the climate of cancellation. Somebody says one thing wrong, and going back to something you said at the beginning about people aren't bad. They might do bad things, but they're not bad. But yet this cancel culture is very much painting people as bad people. Now, we know there are people who do enormously wrong things, right? I'm not on about those. I'm not on about the people who are clear criminals. I'm talking more about the people who say one thing that perhaps most people don't agree with, and then all of a sudden they are a thoroughly bad person who doesn't deserve any form of success. And sometimes people are accused of things that actually they didn't do. And after an investigation, it's come out that they didn't do it. And their entire career and lives are ended. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think cancel culture has become more and more powerful and more obvious as time has gone on. And unfortunately, we live in that world, don't we, where somebody can say one thing on social media that has no basis or foundation or evidence behind it, but they have the power to say one thing that can then adversely impact on
Yeah.
somebody else's life. And that's the reality of the situation. And the more I look at social media, I see it popping up in all sorts of forms of social media. There are social media platforms are better police than others, but it is there. So we've gotten now into this society. There is a whole generation of people that feel it's okay to say bad things or do even bad things towards other people. Um, and I don't know what the answer to that is. I think part of the answer to that is that we need to have more power in the policing of social media platforms. They are raking in billions and billions and billions of pounds or dollars, and they have an innate responsibility to make sure that everything is fact checked, for one thing, that only truth gets out there, whatever truth looks like, and that people are protected in the
Yeah.
whole gambit of social media as well. But
Yeah.
on the wider issue of cancel culture, the reality is, isn't it, that we all make mistakes. And I'm not talking about, as you say, putting criminals to one side. I'm talking about mistakes. We
Yeah.
all make mistakes. Sometimes those mistakes are informed mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes are misinformed mistakes. But here's the other reality and the other truth, that as we go through life, we all have this ability to grow. And most of us will grow based on the experiences that we've had in our lives. So if we are canceling somebody who has made a mistake, maybe 10 years ago, we should also understand where they are right now
Yeah.
and how they've grown as a consequence of maybe that mistake that they made 10 years ago. To
Yeah.
rake somebody's issues up, and again, criminal is a whole different thing, but to
Yeah.
rake something up that was done or said 10, 15 years ago that wasn't illegal, I don't think that that should have as much impetus as it perhaps does in this society that we've created around cancel culture.
Yeah.
People grow.
Yeah.
People should be allowed to grow, and we need
Yeah.
to factor that into the equation when we have any of these conversations. That's my take on it.
Absolutely. And I think it's quite interesting that, s- the people who are making the judgments, though these sort of, it's almost like everybody's become the police, right?
Mm,
Um, but the people who are making those judgments, could they hand on heart hold themselves to the same standards? Can they all, some of us, I'm very pro failing. As you know, we've had this conversation. I encourage my children to fail. I encourage my team here to fail because that's how we learn, that's how we grow. However, some of us are very loud and public in our failings, particularly
mm,
celebrities, for instance. Um, some of us don't go on socials. We don't publicize everything that we do. We
mm.
might have had the same failure, but somebody in the public eye is held to a higher standard that we are just because we didn't make it public, but we
Yeah.
might have made the same mistake. And this is the bit that absolutely gets me because like I said, I'm very pro failure. I think that I feel that I've reached a lot of my goals and targets in life that I set for myself as a young 20 something. However, it wasn't easy to get here. I
Mm,
failed so much. I got it wrong before I got it right. You
yeah.
know, I I've run several companies before I've come to Sunshine and opened up Sunshine. I got stuff really wrong. Really wrong. The way that I was bringing business in, trying to balance books and stuff, I got stuff wrong. I learned from it though, and I'm happy to bring that to where I am today. I've managed people
Really.
incorrectly. I've been managed incorrectly. I'm inspired by that because that's what I don't want to do. But
Mm,
yet, I think this cancel culture is very much looking at those individual failings, and it could be just as bad as one phrase, like a comedian says one thing,
mm.
and all of a sudden we're holding those people to a higher standard than we would do ourselves, and therefore then we're just cancelling them out of our minds. And I just think it's just bonkers. It's just a crazy time to live in. And I think as somebody who, I'm neurodivergent, I have physical disabilities as well. I've got Crohn's disease. I can laugh about it all. I don't make any of that clinical. There are clear offensive, like, lines that you don't cross,
Mm,
but uh, I just just get involved in. I'm not saying that I mock people with Crohn's and I don't mock people with ADHD. What I'm saying is, pick your battles.
Yeah.
Some stuff you can just laugh with. We don't have to be offended by everything, you
And
know?
that's it. I think we're in a society where we are too easily offended, but society has also created that environment that
Yeah,
allows us to be too easily offended by things. And I think what we're creating is a sense of fragility in society,
yeah,
um, and and that is leading to this audit culture that I've seen portrayed in so many YouTube videos. You have people hanging around outside police stations, outside
mm,
organizations with video cameras, YouTubing and saying, I'm an auditor, calling themselves an auditor, or shoving the camera in a police officer's face and saying, I'm an
yeah,
auditor. What is that all about, really?
yeah,
Seriously,
no,
what is that about? You're actually preventing public servants from doing the work that they are paid to do, that they serve to do, and very often are underpaid, and very often is dangerous work. And yet you think it's okay to shove a camera in their face to
yeah,
make them feel uncomfortable, to show them up, to maybe even put their lives at risk by exposing their identification, all of
yeah,
these kind of things. That, unfortunately, is the world that we're in. And this whole
yeah,
concept of auditing, whatever that means, I don't even know what that means, but this whole idea of auditing gives people this sense of free license to go out and call other people out correctly or incorrectly. And I genuinely worry about it. You know, you have these teams
yeah.
that go out and chase so-called pedophiles out there. What if
Oh,
that
yeah,
person they're chasing is not a pedophile? You
yeah,
know, what happens? Are you going to take responsibility once you've put it onto a YouTube video of somebody who is falsely accused, that you falsely accused? Are you going to hold yourself accountable to the consequences of the actions of other people as a result of your video? This is the dangerous world in which
yeah,
we live right now, right? Uh,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it, going full circle, I think it takes us away from justice. It creates
yeah,
injustice in the world
yeah.
if we're not careful.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, we know that the police force, for instance, is underfunded,
Yeah.
understaffed, under-resourced, yet we are creating more problems for the police force by doing this stuff. So now they're having to have task forces. This is why things are thin on the ground, because that money, it doesn't just come from a tree somewhere. That money that once funded the bobbies on the beat is now being split between these task forces that are managing these vigilantes and the actual bobbies on the beat. So
And here's the thing
we've
with,
become the problem.
yeah, and here's the thing with any kind of public service, there are too many armchair experts when it comes to any kind of
Yeah,
public service, whether it's doctors, nurses, police, ambulance, whoever they may be. There are far too many people who have not got the lived experience, but they want to commentate on everything as if they have some level of expertise.
yeah,
It is dangerous to do that. And
yeah,
very often you don't have the full picture. And as a consequence of what you're saying, those public servants, and I've been one of those, I've faced people with offensive weapons, with knives.
yeah,
I have faced people who wanted to punch my lights out, maybe even kill me. I've had those people who have threatened my life and the lives of my colleagues. Unless you've been there, you shouldn't really comment
no,
because you don't know what you're
no,
talking about. And that's the reality.
no,
But unfortunately, senior police officers and senior public servants won't say that. Why? Because they're too
no,
scared to say the wrong thing. And if they say the
yeah,
wrong thing, then again, they're going to be lambasted. So again, it goes
yeah.
full circle and we allow injustice to continue.
And it's a phrase that gets bandied about everywhere, but I seldom see people actually executing it, and that is be kind. For
Mm,
some reason, people think it's okay if they're on a computer, for instance, to just be awful.
mm,
And you want to say, it doesn't matter the size of the organization. Like, even if it's, you are having a go at the police or you're having a go at a retail, I don't know, Next or something online or Rolls Royce online, whatever, there will be a human that's reading those comments. And you just chipped away a little bit more
mm.
at how they were feeling today. And some of them are trained to just handle the socials, but wouldn't it be lovely if they didn't have to do that? Wouldn't it be lovely if we
100%.
didn't have jobs specific for ranty people on Facebook? Just be kind. And I think that again is very much at the center of everything we've spoken about today. You know, we don't have to know it all. We don't have to have lived in somebody else's shoes. Just open your mind and be kind and be human centered. It's quite so simplistic. It's not expensive. It's free. It's just all up there. It
Yeah.
just baffles me that people can't get that.
In order for anyone to be a human-centered leader, they have to be a kind leader first and foremost, because I think human-centric leadership is really about connecting with people at a very deep level. And
Yeah.
my expertise is emotional intelligence, and it is really about having high levels of emotional intelligence. And fundamentally, what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is really all about relationship building. So the reason why people hide behind keyboards to type away, saying nasty things about others, is because they don't feel that they have to build those relationships. It's much the same when I connect with somebody on LinkedIn, and within 2 minutes they're now trying to sell me something, as if I'm going to buy from them. Why would I buy from somebody who I don't know, like, or trust yet? So
Yeah.
build relationships. And by building relationships, you create trust. By creating trust, you create open environments. By creating open environments, everyone feels included, and you create a culture of belonging.
Absolutely. Well, what a journey we've been on today. I mean, what a podcast, full of controversial sort of conversations. I absolutely love that. I love that we can just go for it and feel safe together, that we can have these conversations, explore different topics, mention different people, and know that actually we're going to learn something from it. I know I would learn from anything that we
The
talk about.
reality is, though, Christopher, for me, is that there are more and more people who think like us. I am, as I've pushed my movement for human-centered leadership, I am coming across more and more organizations, more and more individuals who think the way that we're thinking, who understand the importance of, creating this all-inclusive, all-belonging cultures based on trust. And, at the Human-Centered Leadership Conference on the 28th of May in Derby, you will see industries from missile defense companies through to the military, through to some of the biggest logistics companies in the UK, all saying the same thing. And that, for me, means that we're going in the right direction. So all is not lost. I think we're just moving a whole new sense of reality, and it's a good reality.
Yeah, we just got to have these hard conversations, haven't we, to open that up. But
Absolutely.
we'll put more details about that conference as well in our show notes. So ping them over, and I'll make sure that they're in the show notes.
Brilliant. And we'll
But
do a discount for all your listeners as well.
yeah. So thank you so much for today, Col. It's been an absolute joy, as always. I knew it would be, because we could just do loads of it. We could just continue with a full-time podcast. We could do this every month. But it's been absolutely wonderful, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
No, it's been fantastic. I always enjoy our chats.
Yeah, they're brilliant. They're the best chats. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed our very controversial podcast. I found it really enlightening, and I do like having my eyes opened to a new way of thinking, even if it is really controversial. Please stay tuned, because we've got more podcasts coming up. And if you'd like to listen to our previous podcasts, you can do so on Spotify and YouTube, with an extended cut on our Sunshine Academy. See you soon.